Welcome to 12 Gauge Investigative.
In the shadows where the truth hides deep, echoes of the lost and the secrets they keep. Cold cases burn in the back of your mind. We dig through the dark, one clue at a time. This ain't fiction, this is blood, this is truth. 12 Gauge Investigative, justice uncaged. We ask the questions they're too scared to say, shining a light where the guilty pray. From killers to whispers, we won't look away.
Okay, can y'all hear me now? All right. Welcome. My name is 12 Gauge. This is my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. I just want to let you guys know we got some documents that just dropped, and I wanted to share these with you because I did say that I was gonna be doing no more until the trial, but this is some big news, so I want to share with you guys. So let's get on with it. And here we go. Hello, Nina. Hello, Rondi. Hello. I thought I saw PKC, but not yet. Okay, here we go. It said the state of Idaho, obviously, versus Brian C. Koberger, redacted memorandum decision and order on defendant's motion to continue. It says introduction. Before the court, a defendant's motion to continue the trial in this matter. The basis for the motion is threefold. First, he assert that the volume of discovery continued to pose a challenge in his counsel's ability to timely and meaningfully review all of it. Second, he asserts challenge to his counsel's ability to timely and meaningfully review all of it. Second, he asserts that there's a penalty phase investigation and preparation that still needs to be done. Third, he asserts the recent and forthcoming publicity on the case is highly prejudicial. Maintaining the current trial setting under these circumstances, he argues, will render any conviction and sentence unconstitutional. So, these are the three reasons that Ann Taylor was given to offer the continuum. We're about to see what else goes on with this. Maintaining the current trial setting under these circumstances, he argues, will render any conviction and sentence unconstitutional. The state responds that defendant's motion is untimely and he has failed to show either good cause for continuing the trial or prejudice that would result from maintaining the current trial setting. Oral argument on the motion was held on June 18, 2025, after which the court took the matter under advisement. The court finds a continuance is not warranted as defendant has not made a showing that there is good cause to continue the trial or that his substantial rights will be prejudiced by proceeding to trial as scheduled. The standard. A motion for continuance of trial is addressed to the sound discretion of the trial court. And then it gives you, obviously, the court case to back that up. And then it says on discretionary matters, the trial court must correctly perceive the issue as one of the discretion, act within the outer boundaries of its discretion, act consistently with the legal standards applicable to the specific choice available to it, and reach its decision by the exercise of reason. And then there's another case law. The analysis. Under Idaho law, a criminal defendant seeking a continuance of trial must demonstrate that his or her substantial rights will be prejudiced absent a continuance. And there is case law, Idaho 794, 797, 891, page 2D. Unless an appellant showed that his or her substantial rights have been prejudiced by reason of a denial of his or her motion for continuance, appellate courts can only be conclude that there is no abuse of discretion. Trial judges necessarily require a great deal of latitude in scheduling trials. The burden of assembling the witnesses, lawyers, and jurors at the place and time for trial. Counsels against continuances except for compelling reasons. There are no mechanical tests for deciding when a denial of a continuance is so arbitrary as to violate due process. The answer must be found in the circumstances present in every case, particularly in the reasons presented to the trial judge at the time the request is denied. Then another case law. Y'all hang with me because this is 12 or 20 pages long. So hang with me. Where a continuance is sought based on a late disclosure or discovery of evidence, the alleged tardiness of the discovery must be shown. So prejudice the defendant case. Preparation for a fair trial will be denied. Case law. The bare claim that additional investigation could have been conducted is not sufficient to demonstrate unfair prejudice so as to support a motion for a continuance. As we heard in the last hearing, he was saying that, you know, there are certain things that are not applicable for a continuance. And they were claiming prejudice, you know. Um, Additionally, where continuance is sought for the potential receipt of evidence from further investigation, the motion is properly denied if based on speculation. Roe versus Katovich. Defendant argues a continuance is necessary for him to sufficiently review relevant discovery, conduct a full and complete investigation of mitigation evidence, particularly claimed newly revealed evidence that allegedly raises red flags, and remedy the prejudice caused by recent and upcoming inflammatory publicity and the alleged leak of information to the media. Moving forward with trial, he warns, will violate his rights under the U.S. and Idaho constitutions to due process, to be free from cruel and unusual punishment, to a fair trial, to effective assistance of counsel, to present a defense and confront witnesses, and to a fair and reliable sentencing determination. Absent from defendant's materials, however, is any good cause for the continuance of legitimate showing of prejudice should the trial proceed as scheduled. I know this is a lot of lingo, but I hope you guys do understand. We're going to get to the to the judge's ruling on this. It said defendant has not demonstrated a continuance is warranted to review discovery. So discovery has been turned over. As we heard in the last hearing, that was one of the biggest things Ann Taylor was discussing. She was discussing that she hasn't had time to go through all the discovery, and she has not been able to put everything in order. Well, the defendants first contend that the vast amount of discovery in this case rendered it impossible for the defense team to review the necessary and relevant discovery in a manner that allows for it to be comprehensively integrated into the defense. He further argued, without any support or explanation, that there are a myriad of issues that continue to arise from the state failing to comply with discovery and expert disclosure deadlines. A continuance, he argues, is necessary for counsel to mount an effective defense. The court, however, rejected the same argument 2 months ago when defendant sought to strike the death penalty and impose discovery obligations upon the state. In its order, the court observed the utter lack of any proof supporting defendant's accusations of discovery violation by the state. More importantly, the court found defendants' complaints of being unable to meaningfully review discovery entirely unconvincing, pointing out that the counsel struggled to articulate in any meaningful way that evidence, let alone relevant evidence, counsel had been unable to review over the past 2+ years, and why efforts to facilitate discovery review were not made long ago to this court or the resource judge. And that's what we heard. The Judge Hippler, was asking her, um, you know, what has taken so long? What has taken you so long? It said the defendant's second round of this argument faces no better. So I'm going to go ahead and stop right here at page 4. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to give you all the news because I know that all of y'all are going to be running off and leaving me talking to myself on this long ass thing. Are you ready for the ruling? Give me some drum roll because I'm about to give you the ruling. Are you ready? How many of you are ready in the chat? I'm going to go back up and read, but how many are you ready? I'm doing good. I'm doing great. Thank you. I hope you're doing well as also. Are you ready? Are you ready for the verdict? The ruling. Here we go. Drum roll, please. Based on the foregoing, defendant's motion to continue. What that say? Can you type it out in the chat? Type it out if you can see it. What that say? The motion is, type it out. Type it out in the chat. Drum roll. The motion for continuance is denied. Denied. You know what that means, everybody? You know what that means? That means we're going to trial. That's what that means. We are going to trial August 11th. And how many of you are happy about this? How many of you are happy that we're going to trial? And I got on here because I wanted to discuss this, okay? I know I said I wasn't going to be on here or do any more live for a while or even do Idaho, but I'm not trying to be a liar. I'm just trying to keep my subs up to what they want to hear, you know? And I think that you guys have gotten used to me going over this paperwork. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But to go over this paperwork with you guys is something that I enjoy. Let me read the last part of this because it's talking about with regard to the Dateline episode, defendant points out the Dateline represented that the material came from sources close to the investigation. He notes that Patterson's upcoming book on the crime promises claims to be the most comprehensive narrative of the investigation and evidence to date, and is based over 300 interviews, several individuals, including the victims' families and local law enforcement. He also notes that the Amazon Prime docuseries promises to be told in captivating, tense, and emotionally wrenching detail by only those involved in the affected by the crime. He argues that if any of these leaks came from witnesses the state intended to call or from others involved in the investigation, the information is Brady material because it would serve to impeach the leaker's credibility and may be exculpatory in nature. He adds that if the investigation revealed that other state agents had information about the leaks but failed to disclose it, this omission would continue or constitute a Brady violation. So we've gone over Brady violations. We've gone over Giglio violations. And if you don't know what these are, I suggest um, that you get acclimated with this because there's a lot of people that have no clue what these documents say. They just listen to other people and they get on their lives and they discuss certain things, and it's like, why are you talking about that? We're way past that portion of preparing for trial. We have already gone through suppression. We've already gone through motion to eliminate. We've already gone through all that. When the judge called the hearing to prepare everybody and discuss what the trial is going to be like, what he expects, and what he constitutes, then everything else has pretty much been decided. So we're not going to do the motion to eliminate anymore. We're not going to do the suppression evidence. We're not going to do any of this stuff. We're way past that. He's already ruled on that. So, as noted, a continuance is not warranted where the information sought thereby is mere speculation. So, the judge discussed that this continuance is not warranted because the information sought is speculation. The defendant's Brady argument is built on a house of speculative assumptions. An assumption that there was a leak by persons bound by the non dissemination order, an assumption the leaker will be found, an assumption that the leaker were law enforcement, an assumption that the leakers or others who may be were complicit will be testifying as a government witness, and the assumption that these witnesses will likely be material. Such assumptions are not grounds for a continuance, particularly given that there is no guarantee if and when they will be confirmed or debunked. This trial cannot be held hostage indefinitely to the outcome of the investigation, particularly given the very significant chance that the leaker may never be discovered. Thus, the court will not continue the trial pending the results of an investigation based on speculation that it will be successful and the hope that impeachment evidence may be uncovered as a result. Because he was, um, whenever, I'm going to go over this in more detail probably this weekend. But let me show you something else. This is about the alternative perpetrators. these are so damn long, I can't do all these in one night. You get what I'm saying? I want to. I'm sure plenty of people are going to break them down and be on for hours and hours and hours. I just don't have that kind of time or want to. You know what I mean? So it says introduction. This is a redacted order on defendant's offer of proof, alternate perpetrators. The state previously moved in limine seeking to preclude defendant from offering or arguing alternative perpetrator evidence without first satisfying the applicable evidentiary standards. In accordance with the court's subsequent order on the motion, defendant filed his offers of proof and evidence in support, identifying 4 individuals as potential alternate perpetrators. The state objects to this presentation of this evidence at trial, arguing it failed to satisfy the standard of their State versus Meister 148 Idaho 236. So the state is objecting to this, obviously. Defendant conceded at oral argument that at this point his proffer is not sufficient to pursue an alternate perpetrator theory at the onset of trial, but requests latitude in cross examination of the state's witnesses to try to establish additional evidence to satisfy the Meister standard. The court concludes that at this time, defendant's alternate perpetrator proffer is inadmissible under Meister as it is irrelevant or excluded by IRE 403. However, this does not preclude defendant from cross-examining law enforcement regarding the resemblances of its investigation, its follow-up on plausible leads. Standard. Trial courts have broad discretion in the admission of evidence at trial. A trial court acts within the bounds of its discretion when it correctly perceived the issue as one of discretion, acted within the outer boundaries of its discretion, acted consistently with the legal standards applicable to the specific choices available to it, and reached its decision by the exercise of reason. And then it gives you case law. The analysis, the seminal Idaho case on the admissibility of alternative perpetrator evidence is Meister Supra. Prior to Meister, a defendant wishing to present such evidence at trial had to first present proof of connection with the crime, such as a train of facts or circumstances, as tend to clearly to point out someone besides the accused as the guilty party. Remote acts, disconnected and outside of the crime itself, cannot be separately proved for such a purpose. The case law, State versus Larson. Meister clarified that the Idaho rules of evidence, rather than the more onerous Larson standard, control alternative perpetrator evidence admissibility. I'm getting there, guys. I'm getting there. It says under these rules, evidence is relevant if it has any tendency to make the existence of any fact that is consequent to the determination of the action more probable or less probable than it would be written without the evidence. State versus Garcia. Idaho Rule of Evidence 403 governs the exclusion of relevant evidence and permits a court to exclude evidence if the probative value is substantially outweighed by a danger of unfair prejudice, confusing the issues, misleading the jury, undue delay, wasting time, or needlessly presenting cumulative evidence. Meister further offered the following guidance on applying these rules and determining whether proffered alternative perpetrator evidence is relevant and admissible. If the defendant proffers evidence which merely leads or tends to mislead the jury that another person committed the crime, or the evidence is not relevant because it does not tend to make the defendant's involvement more probable or less probable, then it's within the trial court's discretion to find the evidence inadmissible. Mere inferences that another person could have committed the crime will most likely not be relevant, and if relevance will still be the subject to the limitation provisions of IRE 403. A defendant has no right to present irrelevant evidence, and even if the evidence is relevant, it may be excluded in certain cases. Case law. 139, Idaho 722. The Idaho rules of evidence effectively safeguard against the admission of conjectural inferences without the lower courts needing to apply the Larson direct connection doctrine. And then it gives you State versus Meister. Here, the evidence defendant has offered purporting to establish the four individuals as alternative perpetrators objectively fails to meet the Meister standard. Namely, the evidence is entirely irrelevant. Nothing links these individuals to the homicides or otherwise gives rise to a reasonable inference that they committed the crime. Indeed, it would take nothing short of rank speculation by the jury to make such a finding. Three of the individuals were each socially connected to one or more of the victims, interacted with one or more of the victims at social events in the hours prior to the homicide. So, we're going with the frats here. Does that not sound like that's where we're going? Is that not sounding like the frats that the defense were um, are trying to put the frats in this alternate perpetrator? Good evening, everybody. I have been reading. I didn't have a chance to see everybody that came into the chat. Thank you so much for being here. I decided to hop on because this is big news. This is big news. And I hope that you appreciate the fact that I did come on just to give this news to you, to be able to read it with you and to discuss it with you. So therefore, there's no confusion, because there's a lot of individuals that get confused by the wording, by certain things. And it said the testimony rejected by the trial court has bore persuasive assurances of trustworthiness and thus is well within the basic rationale of the exception for declaration against interest. That testimony also was critical to Chambers' defense in these circumstances where constitutional rights directly affecting the ascertainment of guilt and implicated the hearsay rule may not be applied mechanistically to defeat the ends of justice. In other words, Chambers indicate that the due process requires hearsay rules to bend to evidence directly bearing determination of guilt. It does not hold that unreliable evidence may be admitted simply because it may be relevant to the defense case. As the court later stated, the accused did not have to have an unfettered right to offer evidence that is incompetent, privileged, or otherwise inadmissible under standard rules of evidence. Montana versus IDAHO4. And these are the redacted portions of this. But it says, live within walking distance of the crime scene and were familiar with the layout of the victim's home from prior social events. While perhaps this evidence could suggest an opportunity to commit the crime, which no doubt is an opportunity shared by dozens of others in the victim's social circle, there is no compelling evidence that any of them had a motive to kill the victims, much less physically harm them or a means to do so. Further, there is no evidence connecting them to the crime scene. Listen to that as I'm saying it, because this is going to be something that is going to be argued on YouTube from here to the trial. Okay? It says, while perhaps this evidence could suggest an opportunity to commit the crime, which no doubt is an opportunity shared by dozens of others in the victim's social circles. So that means that everybody in the victim's social circles could have the opportunity, but there is no compelling evidence that any of them had a motive to kill the victim. So Dylan, Bethany, any of them that people continue to say, the court has ruled on this, much less physically harm them or a means to do so. Further, there is no evidence connecting them to the crime scene. I know Bethany and Dylan could have been connected, but obviously they weren't one of the four that were the alternative perpetrators. They have each cooperated with law enforcement, providing DNA samples, fingerprints, and allowing searches as requested. Notably, lab testing has excluded their DNA from samples taken from the crime scene and the victims. So obviously, there's going to be some DNA on these victims or at the crime scene other than the one on the knife sheath. Maybe I'm just reading it wrong. Can y'all say something in the chat as to my reading? Am I reading it wrong? Um, because it says they have cooperated with law enforcement, providing DNA samples, fingerprints, and allowing searches as requested. Notably, lab testing has excluded their DNA from samples taken from the crime scene and the victims. The fourth individual did not know the victims, but had passing connection to one of them while noticing her shopping at a store approximately 5 weeks prior to the homicide. So this is the individual that, quote unquote, at the very beginning, people were saying or suggesting that this was the stalker. So once L.E. found out about this individual, he was supposedly stalking Kaylee at a Winco or something like that. He followed her briefly out the exit of the store while considering approaching her to talk. He turned away before ever speaking to her. The event was captured on a surveillance camera. This individual subsequently cooperated with law enforcement, providing his phone number and a DNA sample. As with the other alleged alternative perpetrator, lab reports excluded his DNA from the samples taken from the crime scene and the victims, and there is no evidence connecting him to the crime scene. Can you imagine they were putting him as one of the alternative perpetrators? The guy at the Winco, the two guys that were at the Winco that were supposedly stalking Kaylee, the defense was trying to put them as an alternate perpetrator. Well, I can see why, but there you have your answer. That makes sense. That makes sense. And then they redact some more. It says the fact that these individuals live within walking distance of the crime scene is not a probative evidence given that the perpetrator drove a vehicle to the crime scene. Further, none of these individuals drove a vehicle matching the description of the suspected killers. Collectively, defendants proffer with regard to these four individuals failed to give rise to even an inference that they committed the crimes or otherwise make it more or less likely that the defendant was the perpetrator. Therefore, it is irrelevant under IRE 401. Defendant has provided no probative, admissible, significant evidence of motive. Ill feelings mean presence at the scene or any other connection to the crime that could possibly move the ball to the extent it supports an alternative perpetrator theory. At best, the defendant's offer of proof can give rise to only wild speculation that it is possible any one of these four individuals could have committed the crimes, which is inadequate under Meister. Again, inferences that another person could have committed the crime will most likely not be relevant. Meister 148 Idaho at 241 220, page 3D. In other words, it is not sufficient for a defendant to merely offer up unsupported speculation that another person may have committed the crime, which is all defendant has done here. Even if there was a shred of probative value in the proffered evidence beyond wild speculation, it is excluded by IRE 403. As the Tenth Circuit noted regarding alternate perpetrator evidence, it is not sufficient for the defendant merely to offer up unsupported speculation that another person may have done the crime. Such speculative blaming intensifies the grave risk of jury confusion and it invites the jury to render its finding based on emotion or prejudice. And that's something that you don't want. You don't want the jury to be basing their decision on emotion. So here we go. It says, likewise, here presentation of the proffered alternative perpetrator evidence would pose a great threat of confusing the issues because it would force the state to defend against a nebulous allegation that perhaps these individuals were involved. This foray would lead the jury astray, turning its focus away from whether defendant, the only person whose actions are on trial, committed the charged crimes. It also presents a threat of unfair prejudice, as it would invite the jury to blame unprecedented persons for a heinous crime when there is not a scintilla of competent evidence connecting them to the crime. Finally, it would do nothing more than waste the precious time of the jury and the court in what is already a scheduled 3-month trial. Nonetheless, the court's ruling does not preclude defendant from confronting and cross-examining the state law enforcement witnesses regarding the thoroughness of the investigation, particularly in following up and ruling out leads. Generally, indeed, the Idaho Court of Appeals recently found in an unpublished opinion that questioning a detective about failing to follow up on another plausible lead was relevant to alternative perpetrator analysis. We agree with Emerson that a relevant line of inquiry would be to question the scope and breadth of the investigation and to explore on cross examination whether plausible investigative leads about third parties were ignored or overlooked. State versus Buck. It further stated that this line of questioning may not include inquiries about the investigation of the specific third parties absent. Meister noting, while evidence challenging the thoroughness and reliability of the investigation might be probative, questioning whether law enforcement investigated specific individuals with no connection to the murder provided no probative evidence. Moreover, with no connection between the evidence and the crime, there is no explanation or justification for the questioning. So, why would they question somebody who there is no evidence connecting them to the crime or the evidence? And would it help the jury answer the only question in this case, whether Emerson killed James? And now, on that case, the court will apply these same parameters at trial regarding defendant's cross examination of law enforcement. He may inquire as to reasonableness of the investigation, including investigating and ruling out other leads. He is not, however, permitted to question law enforcement about the investigation of any specific individual as a potential alternate perpetrator without first raising the matter with the court outside the jury's presence. The order, based on the foregoing, defendant's offer of proof, alternative perpetrators, is denied. It is so ordered, dated this 26th day of June, 2025. And there you have it. Does anybody have any questions about what I just read? Y'all have any thoughts about what I just read? It's pretty cut and dry, right? Instead of making y'all sit through hours and hours of me reading all that stuff, I mean, you can go to the website and read it. If you don't understand it, you can ask questions, right? And let me show you the website as the other two that were dropped, I think, today. I read this one, motion to continue. I read the alternative perpetrators. Then there's all order sealing the exhibit of defendant 24 supplemental for discovery, amended scheduling order, defendant's motion to seal exhibit with defendant 24 supplemental request for discovery, defendant 24 supplemental request for discovery. And that's all that came out today. But these two are the most important, I would believe. And guess what, folks? We're going to trial. We are going to trial. So mark your calendars. August 11th, I believe, is when the trial starts. All this other BS about, you know, motions in limine and supplemental request of suppression and all this other stuff that you might be seeing on YouTube. All that is just for people to click on there and have emotional attachment to that portion of the pre-existing hearings leading up to the trial that we've already gone over. So there's nothing that can happen between now and trial. I know people are going to try to spin the alternative perpetrators, all the people that talked about, well, we sent this to Ann and this was this and that was that. Well, you see exactly what that got you, right? The court ruled against it all. We're going to trial. There's nothing that people can say. They can say what they want on their channels. They can present it how they want to. They can spin it how they want to. But there's nothing that's going to stop this train from rolling at this point. They can be upset. They can be angry. They can be outraged. They can be a lot of things. But the fact of the matter is they can't stop this train. It's rolling. August 11th, it's going to roll into Boise. And, you know, that hearing, the judge told everybody exactly what he expected during the trial. There's only going to be certain things accepted, you know. This is how he wants to be ran. This is how he, no surprises in front of the jury. None of all that stuff. You know what I mean? And I will continue to, you know, I check in. I'm not going away. I didn't say I was going away. So if people took that as me going away, I'm sorry if that's how you took it. But, you know, um, okay, I just saw this on Viviana. She said it'd been pushed back 1 week. Let me see. I didn't see that one. The trial start date has been pushed back 1 week. No explanation yet, but would appear to be related to scheduling conflict, as no motions are mentioned. So that is also part of it. So it looks like July sealed proceedings will be July 28th. Jury will commence. So jury voir dire will commence on August 4th. And it is estimated the trial itself, beginning with opening statements, will commence on August 18th. Okay, so instead of August 11th, it's going to be August 18th. Okay, so so we can look forward to August 18th as been beginning the start of the trial. Anything before that will just be trying to seat the jury. And as we were told before, he's going to try to seat 20 jurors instead of 12 because of all the things that have been going on. That have been going on with the leakage and stuff like that. So I'm going to show y'all something that I just sent to my email. Something that I'm very happy about. I've yet to get the actual stuff, but I'm happy about this. Making sure it doesn't have my name on it. It doesn't. Good. So I'm going to show y'all this because I believe in showing evidence in everything I do because I am questioned nonstop about certain things. Can y'all see that? I know the graduation date's a little off. It's actually June. But y'all see what my GPA is? 3.857. Dean's List. 100%. 180 of 180 credits completed. You see what that says? Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice. I don't lie when I get on here. I don't exaggerate things. I don't embellish things. I don't talk about things that I know nothing about. If I say that I don't know anything about it, I don't know anything about it. I don't lie. I'm not a liar. And there you have it. Proof that I have a bachelor's in criminal justice. The master's is next. So when people attack me as far as my education not being valid or enough, doesn't mean anything that I have education and certain people do not, and this and that. I'll always lean on this side that it took me a long while to get to this bachelor's. 180 credits at 4.5 per course. That's a long journey if you don't do the math appropriately, right? So this does not just represent 2 years of my life. It represents a continuum of where my life has gone, what my life has been about. I myself have overcame addiction myself. I've overcame a lot of different things in my life. And to achieve this at my age means a lot to me. It may not mean anything to anybody else, or my credentials or the way that I present things or all that stuff may not mean anything to anybody else, but it means a lot to me, you know? And that's why I get so upset when I hear people attack me because they don't know where my life has been. All they know is the 12 gauge that they see on here and they hear on here. They don't know the journey that it's taken to get to this point in my life. For a lot of them, it's easy to stand up here and, you know, degrade everything about anybody else who's going through anything in life or who's actually been in a crime victim and all this other stuff, you know? But if you go back into the earlier videos on my library, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. I've overcame a lot to get here. I in no way try to demean anybody who doesn't have an education. No way whatsoever. If I do anything, I would try to pursue their excellence in obtaining anything that they can anything that they can achieve, whatever they're overcoming. I push for that. I try to be positive. No, they didn't move it back. They moved it forward. It's August 18th now. So I just wanted to share that with you guys because it means a lot to me. It means a lot to me. And not only the monetary value as well. This degree wasn't free. The 2-year one before that wasn't free. The licensure that I got to do for that licensure are not free. The miles that I log each and every day trying to assist individuals in their crisis is not free. I'm not painting myself as a victim right now. I'm just merely stating that I go above and beyond every day to be a better person for anyone that I cross paths with. And for any of you who think that you know me on this internet, who want to judge what I know or what I don't know, or how I present it or how I don't present it, It shows your ignorance in every step of the way. So keep judging. I'll keep blasting. And I'll be here for the long haul. Because after this case, a lot of you aren't going to have anything to talk about but just the appeals. And at that point, it's going to be boring. You're going to be saying the same stuff that we've heard over 2.5 years. That's all you'll be hearing on YouTube is if it does go to a guilty verdict, you'll be hearing about the appeals. Well, everybody was corrupt in this case. The judges, the lawyers, the law enforcement, the experts, everybody was paid off. That's why he was guilty. Start singing another song. Say, I'm doing this because I want people to be cult like with me and I want them to pay my bills. We got one creator who's been attacking me for a while now, got his electricity turned off, can't even afford to turn on his electricity. Got another creator grifting for him to turn on this man's electricity. But that's none of my business, right? It is my business as long as they keep my name in their mouth. And I've always told them, I won't mention you. I won't talk about your channels. I won't talk about your stuff. Just keep my name out of your mouth. Keep my channel out of your mouth. You might not like what I present, and that's fine. Just stop talking about it. Jealousy and envy is an awful thing. It really is. And I hope that those of you that have stayed with me from the very beginning and continue to show up every night when I go live, that you continue to see the growth in my lives, the growth of my investigative skills, the growth of me presenting things to you in a way that you're able to understand and that we can discuss in this chat because it is for you, about you, and nothing more. You don't have to defend me if you hear people talking about me in other chats. You don't. You really don't. Let ignorance be where it lies because one of the people that talked the most shit, I've actually seen him on camera. And I'd hate to have to go after a geriatric looking person like him. I really would because, it's not worth it. It's like going after somebody that can't defend themselves. Maybe that's why they're so loud. Have y'all ever heard the loudest person in the room is usually the weakest? Have you ever heard that? Oh, serious. They say bad things about everybody who doesn't agree with them. I'm not the only one. There's another person that they go after. They say all kinds of stuff. It doesn't matter at this point. It really doesn't. But the loudest person in the room is always the weakest. Always. Remember that. So these people that get on this mic and they're yelling and spitting and cussing and all this other stuff, it shows their true colors. The loudest person in the room is always the weakest. You don't have to get angry if you don't have to prove something to somebody. Adults talk in conversational value, not by yelling at each other, trying to gaslight the other person or to make somebody else look inferior or look like they don't know what they're doing because you want people to believe in you. Well, if you have to do that, then you have very low self-esteem. You have very low worth of yourself in order to have to parade around degrading other people to build yourself up. And I know I'm guilty of it. I've done it at times on my channel. I'll be the first to admit. There's 2 videos on there that talk about grinding my gears. I went after people, but not by name calling, but their content and the misinformation that they've presented to the world. There's a crime happening every moment of the day. And there's people whose families are affected every time they get that phone call with bad news. I don't know what point I'm trying to make, but I hope that you guys do understand my purpose as having this channel, and I appreciate each and every one of you that continue to support me and that come in here and that you have intellectual conversation, analytical conversation, even if we don't agree on what you say. You know, I gifted memberships the other day, right? Gifting memberships randomly. This is a random thing. I don't control who gets those memberships. And two of those memberships went to two people that obviously do not like me, right? And usually those memberships go to people who are lurking in the bushes, which is interesting. And one of those people that says they never come over here, they would never listen to what I say, was one of the persons that got the memberships. So get over yourself. I didn't gift it to you directly. YouTube gifted it to you. Unsubscribe, unfollow, do what you need to do. Once again, I'm going to say it loud and clear. Keep my name out of your mouth, keep my channel out of your mouth, and you won't hear from me because I don't give a damn about that much about your content. It's irrelevant to me, just like the PCA is to you. All day, every day, and twice on Sundays. You beautiful people in the chat, y'all have a wonderful evening, and I hope to see you soon. I won't come on unless there's breaking news, but I will continue to upload stuff. That way you will continue to be acclimated with different things. I got two of the Noah Prescott or Pressgrove case that I did earlier on when it came out. I will be uploading those, so that won't be live. I won't come live unless there's something that needs to be spoke about, and I'll definitely be here for the trial. Thank you so much for all your love, all your support. Maestro, cue that music.